Last October, I made a 36-team NHL realignment, and a lot has happened since then. So what better than to make a new 36-team realignment? Play the intro. When we last left off, I had 36 teams, with Arizona moving to Kansas City, and Utah, Houston, Atlanta, and Quebec getting expansion teams. Unless you've been sleeping under a rock, you probably know that Arizona has suspended operations and transferred players to Utah. It's kind of like an expansion, but with a relocated roster and staff. Anyway, because of the transfer, Arizona was considered an inactive franchise. Owner Alex Morello had 5 years to bring the Coyotes back as an expansion team if he could win the land auction to build a new arena by 2029. Until a few weeks later, when the land auction was cancelled and he transferred the rights to the Coyotes' name and logos back to the league. The two biggest cities interested are Houston and Atlanta. There is speculation that those two cities could be the next two expansion teams in a few years. Two other cities could join as well a few years after that. Other cities that have shown interest in an NHL team include Cincinnati, Phoenix, Quebec City, Kansas City, and Omaha. I'll get Omaha out of the way. No offense to anyone in Nebraska, but Omaha is not made for professional hockey. They could house the AHL team for a team a few hours south, but unless Omaha has a huge boom in terms of population, economy, and hockey interest, I don't see the NHL going there. Cincinnati is interesting. They did have a WHA team called the Stingers. Attendance at Cincinnati Cyclones games is high by ECHL standards. However, I feel like they aren't making the cut, since he just isn't ready. That and the Blue Jackets might try to block the expansion. Houston has been rumored to house a team for a while. There were rumors that the Coyotes would move there, but that isn't happening. Rockets owner Tillman Fertitta has stated that he is interested in an NHL team. Houston has an arena that can hold hockey. Atlanta is a city that people thought wouldn't get an NHL team for a while, but reports came out that two groups are interested in an NHL team and building a new arena that can hold hockey. Atlanta has hockey fans, and I feel like the third time will be the charm. If you know this channel, you know I've been slamming the table for an NHL team in Kansas City. For those who are skeptical about Kansas City, the NHL has given the following cities second chances with teams: Ottawa, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, the Bay Area, Minnesota, Atlanta, Quebec City, believe it or not. Even St. Louis got a second chance. Also, the Scouts were in the mid-70s. You can't use the 70s as an excuse as to why Kansas City shouldn't get a second chance. I could go further, but that's for another time. KC has an arena and a passionate fan base, but they need an owner to step up. The Hunt family, Mahomes, Kelsey, Taylor Swift, Salvador Perez, someone with deep pockets needs to drop $1 billion on Bettman's doorstep to change his mind. And of course, you can't mention NHL expansion without Quebec City. They need no introduction. Bring back the Nordiques, blah blah blah, Bettman is evil, blah blah blah. For this scenario, I will use the following cities: Houston, Atlanta, Quebec, and Kansas City. 3 of those cities have had NHL teams before: the Kansas City Scouts, Atlanta Flames and Thrashers, and the Quebec Nordiques and Bulldogs. Yes, I use the Bulldogs as a reference. They were an NHL team for 1 year in the NHL's infancy. Also to note, Houston had a team in the WHA called the Arrows. In fact, the Arrows nearly joined the NHL when the two leagues talked about a merger, but they folded after the original plan fell through. And since, according to the rumors and reports, the NHL's plan is to bring in Houston and Atlanta first, with, in this scenario, Kansas City and Quebec City joining a year or 2, maybe 3 later, what would the divisions look like? For identification purposes, I'm using the Arrows as Houston, the Scouts as Kansas City, the Thrashers as Atlanta, and the Nordiques as Quebec. Let's start with the Central. Mostly the same as last time: Chicago, Dallas, Houston, Kansas City, Nashville, and St. Louis. Instead of Colorado and Utah, everyone in the comments said both Texas teams should be in the Central. And it makes sense in terms of time zones. In the Mountain Division, we have Calgary, Colorado, Edmonton, Minnesota, Utah, and Winnipeg. Originally, I planned to have Colorado and Utah in division with Vegas and the California teams. That was until I realized there were two other teams in the Pacific time zone along with Vegas and California. Speaking of which, the Pacific Division features Anaheim, Los Angeles, San Jose, Seattle, Vancouver, and Vegas. All 6 teams are in the Pacific time zone, so it works. Nestled in the Northeast are Boston, Buffalo, Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto, and Quebec. Originally, I planned to have Detroit take Buffalo's spot, but I knew Buffalo had rivalries with Toronto and Boston. Out with the name Metropolitan and in with the Civic Division are Detroit, New Jersey, both New York teams, Philadelphia, and Pittsburgh. Detroit might feel like an odd man out since I wanted Buffalo in here, but what do I know? And finally, we have the Southeast Division, made up of Atlanta, Carolina, Columbus, Florida, Tampa Bay, and Washington. 5 of those teams were in the Southeast Division back in the day, and Columbus is just there. Now, unlike the previous video, I'm going to show how both the schedule and the playoff format works in this 36-team league. Let's use the Blues as an example. In this schedule structure, the Blues will play 2 divisional opponents 5 times, the other 3 4 times, and everyone else 2 times. For this example, St. Louis would play Chicago and Kansas City 5 times, with St. Louis hosting Chicago thrice and visiting twice, and vice versa with Kansas City. Meanwhile, St. Louis would host and visit Dallas, Houston, and Nashville twice. The NHL can decide whether to rotate each year or keep the same teams for the 5 rivalry games. That leaves the Blues playing and hosting every other team from the other 5 divisions at least once. 2 times 5 plus 3 times 4, or 10 plus 12 equals 22. 2 times 6 equals 12. 12 times 5 equals 60. 22 plus 60 equals 82 games. This way, a full 82-game season can happen without needing to expand the schedule. I even made a spreadsheet if anyone wants to see. Now, there is an argument that the NHL should abolish divisions. Looking at you, Charlie. But I don't think they should. Not just because this isn't Major League Soccer. Here's my reason. Time zones. The East doesn't have a problem because everyone is in the Eastern time zone. The West doesn't have that luxury. In this concept, 8 teams are in the Central time zone, 4 are in the Mountain, and 6 are in the Pacific. A fan of a team from the Central Division already has problems when 6 teams have 7 or 7:30 Pacific start times, which is 9 or 9:30 start times. And I've heard the hockey guy say in several videos that removing conferences might take away rivalries. If you play your division multiple times, there are multiple chances to maximize rivalries. For the playoffs, 18 teams make it. Why? And how? The division winners claim the top 3 seeds in the playoffs, with points deciding who is 1 through 3. Conference standings decide seeds 4 through 9. The 8th and 9th seeds face off in a 3-game wildcard series. The winner plays the number 1 seed. The quarterfinals, also known as the first round, sees 1 versus 8 or 9, 2 versus 7, 3 versus 6, and 4 versus 5. The semifinals, also known as the second round, features the winner of 1 versus 8 or 9 play the winner of 4 versus 5, and the winner of 2 versus 7 play the winner of 3 versus 6. The conference finals, also known as the third round, has the 2 winners from the semifinals play each other. The 2 conference champions face each other in the Stanley Cup final. And that's my updated 36-team NHL expansion. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Today's shoutout goes to Michael Talbot. I'll see you in the next video.